Hello everyone and welcome to another Throwback Thursday, and as I said in the previous episode, this is a big one because back at the end of March 2011 we had the Tinseltown of Antwerp American Civil War weekend, which was a first bull run that year, and it actually was spread out over 4 full blog posts on my website, so you can imagine it was a really, this is gonna be a really big episode. So the weekend of the infamous TSA Mega Battle had arrived, and this year it was the first bull run, as I said, or first Manassas, depending where your loyalties lie. I'm in command of the 2-2 Army of Nevada, taking the role of Colonel Ambrose E. Burnside, and yes, I had my facial hair grown to a measly impersonation of him. You might find pictures elsewhere. I'm not bestowing that horror upon you all. And the brigade I had command over, that was this one. Now for some statistics of the game, the table we're playing on is a 36 square meters, using 197 TSS tiles in up to 4 layers, about 23 meters of rows around the table, 600 trees for 9 square meters of a forest, about 3,000 models including the spectators which were also there historically are used, all from the collection of Patrick Smiths, and to be commanded by 34 players in total. Of course, our club provides the full catering, while our friends of the Red Barons provide the umpires. And that's, if you followed last week's Throwback Thursday, where my jacket came back to me. The pictures of the battle on day 1 are to follow, so here we go, as of day 1 took off. I'm refraining myself from commentaries, as a picture often says more than 1,000 words, but as the battle stands at the moment after 12 turns, so this was a picture from the end of the day, the Union is in part due to better luck with the arrival rolls for the reinforcements, currently hold a higher hand, with the Confederate line about to collapse in the Warrenton Turnpike sector, where my division is currently one of the 4 Union brigades, opposing only 2 Confederate ones, and throwing open as much as the entire left flank of the table to move forward and intercept the army of Shenandoah, which is busy of entering the fray. On a side note, the red and blue blocks you see here and there on the table are the markers we were using for hidden movement. We didn't identify units there, so while the Union forces arrive near the Red Ridge Farm, Stonebridge is held by a small Confederate force, but gradually reinforcements start to arrive as the 1st Brigade crosses the Bull Run. Caught in the flank and surrounded, the Confederates are now forced to yield Stonebridge and their field works, so the Union swamps over them. As more Union troops pour over from Matthews Hill, while the Sounders start a retreating battle towards their own baselines. With Stonebridge lost, the Confederates bring in fresh forces to block the ridge between Henry's House and Chin Ridge. So the spectators are still observing the battle in the meantime. The Union Army under Hunter starts to assemble on the Warrenton Turnpike, gathering together no less than 4 brigades opposing 1.5 Confederate brigades, as the Union reinforcements arrive en masse from a flanking move. So yeah, it's looking really not that well for the Confederates at this point. The 1st Union troops advance on Chin House, as the Confederates, sensing the hopelessness of the situation there, start to withdrawal and leaving only small units to act, basically as speed bumps. But yeah, that was the situation of the game at the end of day 1, so let's go on to day 2 when everything will be decided. We move to the 2nd day of fighting out the battle, and this is a bit of a picture of how the field looked at the end. The army of Shenandoah arrives and starts reinforcing the quavering lines, even pressing onto Henry's Hill to form a fresh front line right behind Henry's house. So, however, the huge amount of already present Union forces press forward the advantage, pushing back the Confederate units into a bottleneck. So, yeah, they didn't really get out of there, the Southerners. So, deciding to lock the battlefield, the Union forms a line at the base of Chin Ridge, effectively locking the whole sector from Chin House to New Market in a Mexican standoff, which would cost the Confederates very greatly if they would ever decide to mount an attack. They could have tried a biggest charge of all Lit or something, but they would pay dearly. So with the 2 front lines on either side of Henry's Hill, the center of the battle, and the battlefield center, well, it ended there. The game was over on that part of the field, so there would just be some pot shots along the way, as the Shenandoahans march onwards through New Market in a vain effort to break out over the flank. So look at Jackson standing there like a stone wall, but well, it was more in a negative way, as history also says there are 2 versions of what it was meant with that famous line. Now the battle line slowly starts to stabilize to be able to receive any offer of breakouts, and that caused the opposing Confederate commander to doubt whether or not to charge in gallantly with his cavalry. The meantime, more Union divisions moved up behind the blue curtain towards the battle near Henry's house, so yeah, we just could keep pushing in fresh ones. Shots are being changed, but apart from the odd casualty, no units were forced out of the battle. It was all a big lockdown. As more and more troops get pulled into the battle near Jackson and Johnston's positions, locking them down completely as well. So, yeah. The gridlock closes around the Confederates. They realize it's all over as the blue tide is just, well, too large and has way more space to deploy than the hold-up Confederacy. So, yeah, the battle was for the Union. History was rewritten. The Union scored a major victory. They even bordered on decisive by the way we played Johnny Rep 3 rules. So the Confederacy rebellion had been beaten down even before it really could take off, and the war would last no longer than 30 days. So it's not really what happened historically wise, but hey, that's the name of the game. The reflection of the losses, as you can see here, the name tag stands being actual destroyed regiments, tell a bitter tale for the Southerners. So as to be expected, the center line at Chin Ridge collapsed. Only a few surviving small regiments were still in the woods because the Union decided not to push any further, and we settled with having control of 2/3 of the gaming table basically. The arrival of the army of the Shenandoah did put the South in the fight a bit, but the Union forces kept any possible breakout in check, resulting in them not having a real part in the result, though the fighting was very heavy. My division and its neighbors built a line running from the base of Chin Ridge all the way past to Henry's house, 2 fresh brigades advancing behind to reinforce them when the counterattack would come, and it never came, so the whole battlefield became locked down. In what was a highly enjoyable weekend, and we'll definitely be back next year to fight again. We'll do the next weekend. The heroes of the Union were Willem, Patrick S., Dirk, Bart, Richard, Peter, Liam, Alexis, and myself, while the Southern not-so-bells anymore were Willie, Karim, Erwin, Francois, Barend, Eddie, Patrick V.O., Johan, Kevin, Wim, and Guy. But the real heroes who made it all possible as organizers that were of course the caterers, the toilet ladies, the cameramen, the umpires, the jack of all trades were Johan, our club president, Andre, Patrick R, Christophe, Dirk, and Ronnie. Yeah. Now, there's a little anecdote to go at the end, and it's called The Tale of a Lone Man and His Gun. It's a bit of an aftermath, but each year it's a, well, kind of a running joke, whatever you do at the club. I can be relied on to do something extremely odd from a tactical viewpoint. That's what you get when you put a fantasy gamer into historical wargaming. So this year I found myself in command of a single section of Dahlgrens, which didn't even have limbers to transport it around. So the expectation for the unit was to be left behind swiftly in order to support any possible behind-the-line scouting parties. So think again. I actually manhandled the gun over the roads for 18 turns, much to the amusement of the Empire Dirk, who just couldn't really believe I was doing that. The gun set up in turn 18 right next to Henry's house, and then finally loosened its first and only shot of the battle because it was a final turn. People playing Johnny Red 3 know that a single green section of guns at normal range doesn't do squat, yet I managed to roll so high it actually killed the Southerner. And it would have been hilarious if it would have panicked the Southern units on top, but one cannot expect too much. So yeah, that was it. The Manassas, first Manassas or first Bull Run mega weekend of the Tin Soldier of Antwerp. Hope you enjoyed the pictures. It was a fun memory. So thanks for listening, and if you do, like, subscribe, and see you back next week for the next Throwback Thursday.